There is a moment most people never talk about. It happens in the morning, usually. You wake up, you sit on the edge of the bed, you place your feet on the floor, and then you pause, just for a second, a brief, almost invisible hesitation before you push yourself upright. You didn't used to do that. There was a time when standing up was as automatic as breathing. No planning, no adjustment, no quiet internal negotiation between your brain and your body. You simply stood like it was nothing. Because back then, it was nothing. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. Maybe it was the stairs that started feeling steeper. Maybe it was the moment you noticed yourself reaching for the armrest before you even realized you were doing it. Maybe it was the way your knees spoke to you in the morning, not loudly, not dramatically, but persistently, a stiffness, a heaviness, a reminder that the body you lived in for 6 decades was asking for something different now. Most people, when they reach this point, arrive at the same conclusion. This is just aging. They say it to themselves. They say it to their doctors. They say it to their children when someone asks if they're okay. And they say it with a kind of quiet resignation, as though aging is a door that only swings one way, and there's nothing left to do but walk through it and accept what's waiting on the other side. But here is what I need you to hear, and I need you to really hear it, not just read it and move on. This is not simply aging. What you are experiencing is specific. It is measurable. It has a name, and it has a solution. And the moment you understand what's actually happening inside your body, not in vague terms, but in real, concrete, biological terms, everything changes because you stop feeling like a passenger in your own decline and you start feeling like someone with options. That is exactly what this is about. After the age of 60, the human body begins to lose muscle mass at a rate of approximately 1 to 2% per year. That figure comes from longitudinal research published by the National Institute on Aging, and it is not a minor statistic. Over the course of a decade, that is a 10 to 20% reduction in muscle, and that reduction does not happen evenly. Here is the part that most people never get told. The large muscles, the ones you can see, the ones that carry you through a walk around the block or up a gentle hill, those hold on longer. They're resilient. They respond to everyday activity. They give you the impression that things are still working the way they always did. But the small muscles are a different story entirely. The tiny stabilizing muscles that surround your knee, the ones whose entire purpose is to keep the joint protected, aligned, and safe under load, those muscles decline far faster than the large visible ones, which means you may still be walking, you may still be moving, you may look at yourself and say, I'm fine, I'm active. But underneath that movement, something quieter and more serious is unfolding. Your joint is becoming less protected with every passing year. And when protection decreases, pressure increases. That pressure is what you feel when you hesitate at the top of the stairs. It's what you feel when getting out of the car takes more effort than it used to. It's what wakes you up at 3 in the morning when you've been lying in the same position too long. It is not random. It is not mysterious. It is the completely predictable result of a specific kind of muscle loss that almost no one addresses directly because almost no one knows it's happening. A clinical review from the University of Copenhagen found that adults over 65 experience up to a 30% reduction in quadriceps strength even when they remain moderately active. 30%. That is not a small number. That is the difference between recovering your balance and losing it. That is the difference between descending stairs with confidence and holding the railing like it's the only thing standing between you and the floor. And this is where I want to stop for a moment and be honest with you about the advice most people receive. Walk more, stay active, keep moving. These are good words. Walking matters, movement matters. But here is the truth that rarely gets said out loud. Walking alone does not strengthen the specific muscles that protect your kneecap from drifting. It does not re-engage the inner stabilizers that keep your joint in alignment. It does not restore the morning lubrication that makes your first steps feel like steps instead of obstacles. General activity is not the same as targeted resistance. And after 60, the difference between those two things is enormous. There is also something happening while you sleep that almost no one talks about, and understanding it will change the way you think about your mornings forever. Inside your knee joint, there is a fluid called synovial fluid. Its job is to lubricate the joint, nourish the cartilage, and allow smooth, painless movement. When you are active, this fluid moves freely. It circulates. It does what it's meant to do. But after 7 to 8 hours of stillness, after a full night of sleep, that fluid thickens. It becomes more viscous, more sluggish. Think of olive oil sitting in a cool room. It hasn't solidified. It hasn't stopped working, but it flows more slowly than it did when it was warm and in motion. This is why your first steps in the morning feel different. This is why the first few minutes after you get out of bed are the hardest. This is why your knees feel stiff and reluctant and foreign to you before they slowly begin to loosen up. That experience is not damage, it is chemistry. And chemistry, unlike so many other things in life, can be influenced. The right movements, done in the right order, at the right time of day, can warm that fluid up, get it moving again, and transform the way your mornings feel. Not in weeks, not after months of dedication, within minutes of starting. What you're about to read is not a workout. There are no weights involved, no gym membership required, no floor exercises that leave you wondering how you're going to get back up, no complicated sequences that demand coordination you haven't needed since your 30s. This is a neuromuscular activation sequence, 5 targeted movements, each one designed to wake up a specific system in your body that has gone quiet. The ankle stabilizers that prevent hard heel strikes from traveling up into your knee, the inner quadriceps muscle that keeps your kneecap tracking the way it should, the joint itself through gentle motion that circulates synovial fluid and feeds cartilage that has no blood supply of its own, the eccentric braking system that prevents you from collapsing when you sit down or descend a staircase. And the lateral hip stabilizer, the muscle almost no one trains properly after 60, that determines whether your pelvis stays level when you walk or tilts in a way that sends damaging force straight into your knee with every single step. 10 to 12 minutes, 2 to 4 days a week. That is the investment. And the return on that investment is something no amount of general walking can reliably deliver. If you're finding this valuable, and I genuinely hope you are, this would be a wonderful moment to like this and share it with someone you love. Leave a comment below telling us your age and where you're reading from. We read every single one. You'd be surprised how much a community of people asking the same questions and making the same changes can support each other through this. The first movement is called the seated tibial raise, and it surprises almost everyone because it looks almost too simple to matter. Sit tall in a sturdy chair, both feet flat on the floor. Now, keeping your heels planted, lift only your toes, the front of your foot slowly upward toward your shins. Hold for 2 seconds. Lower slowly for 3 seconds, 12 repetitions, 2 sets. That's it. But what's happening inside that simple movement is significant. The muscle being activated is the tibialis anterior, the long muscle running along the front of your lower leg. Its job is to lift your foot during each walking stride. When this muscle is weak, your heel strikes the ground with more force than it should. That force doesn't just disappear, it travels upward, ankle, knee, hip, thousands of times a day, small shocks accumulating into something that eventually begins to feel like damage. A study from the University of Delaware showed that strengthening the ankle dorsiflexors, this exact muscle, reduced knee-loading forces in adults over 65 within 8 weeks. Not dramatically, measurably, and measurable, as any good clinician will tell you, means modifiable. Many falls begin not at the knee but at the ankle. Training from the ground up is not a metaphor, it is a strategy. The second movement addresses something almost every MRI report mentions in adults over 60, quadriceps inhibition. The quadriceps is not one muscle, it is 4, and the one that matters most for knee stability is the vastus medialis oblique, the VMO, the teardrop-shaped muscle on the inner side of your thigh, just above the kneecap. When the VMO weakens, the kneecap drifts, only slightly, but slightly is enough, because that subtle drift creates friction, and friction creates irritation, and irritation creates pain that slowly convinces you that your knee is broken when really it just needs to be retrained. The seated terminal knee extension hold addresses this directly. Sit tall, slowly straighten one leg until it is almost fully extended. At the top of that movement, deliberately tighten the muscle above your kneecap, as if you are trying to pull the kneecap upward. Hold for 5 seconds, lower slowly, 10 repetitions per leg, 2 rounds. The trembling you may feel at the top of that movement is not weakness. It is your nervous system reconnecting with a muscle it had started to forget. The third movement is where we stop working on muscle and start working on the joint itself. Cartilage has no blood supply, none. It receives its nutrients entirely from the synovial fluid that surrounds it, and that fluid only moves when the joint moves, which means that stillness over time is literally starving your cartilage. The seated knee glide fixes this. Sit at the edge of your chair. Slowly slide one foot backward, letting the knee bend naturally. Pause. Slowly slide it forward again until the knee straightens. No snapping, no forcing. Just a smooth, controlled glide. Back for 2 seconds. Forward for 2 seconds. 15 repetitions per side. That motion, repeated gently and consistently, circulates fluid through the joint. It feeds the cartilage. It warms the synovial fluid that was thick and sluggish when you woke up. And here is something worth sitting with for a moment. The first steps of your morning often determine the emotional tone of your entire day. When those steps feel painful and uncertain, the brain registers danger, it tightens, it restricts, it braces, and a body that is bracing is not a body that is balancing. When the first steps feel fluid and stable, the brain relaxes, and a relaxed brain is a brain that balances better. The fourth movement is where we translate everything we've built so far into something functional. Controlled rising and lowering. Most people practice standing up. Almost no one practices sitting down slowly. That is a serious oversight, because it is during the lowering phase, when the muscle is lengthening under load, that the real protective work happens. Research from McMaster University showed that eccentric training of this kind increased functional strength in adults over 65 by nearly 32% compared to standard repetition speed. Stand in front of your chair, arms crossed over your chest or lightly touching the armrests. Now lower yourself down slowly, counting 5 full seconds before you touch the seat. Then stand back up at a normal, steady pace. 8 repetitions, 2 to 3 sets. Feel the front of your thighs working. Feel the slow burn of a muscle being asked to do something important. This is what prevents collapse. This is what gives you the braking strength to descend the staircase without gripping the railing for your life. This is what makes your body reliable when the ground is uneven or when someone walks too close and throws off your balance. Falls rarely happen when going up, they happen when going down. And now we arrive at the 5th movement, the one that quietly determines more about your long-term stability than almost anything else, the gluteus medius. It sits on the outer side of your hip. Its job is to keep your pelvis level when you stand on one leg, which is exactly what happens with every single step you take, because walking is not a two-legged activity. Walking is a constant alternation between single-leg stances, and if the gluteus medius is not doing its job, the pelvis tilts with every step, and when the pelvis tilts, the knee collapses slightly inward. And when the knee collapses inward, thousands of times a day, the medial side of the joint absorbs pressure it was never designed to absorb. A Gate study from the University of Pittsburgh found that strengthening the gluteus medius significantly reduced inward knee collapse in adults over 60, improving walking stability within 6 weeks, not 6 months, 6 weeks. The supported side leg raise. Stand beside a wall or hold the back of a chair. Shift your weight onto one leg. Keep that knee soft, not locked. Lift the other leg out to the side, only 8 to 12 inches. Toes pointing forward, body tall. Lift for 2 seconds, pause for 1, lower for 3. 10 repetitions per side, 2 rounds. If balance feels uncertain, one fingertip on the chair is enough. Lateral stability responds to training faster than almost any other quality in the body. 2 to 4 weeks. That is how quickly people begin to notice the difference. Before we go any further, if this content is speaking to something you've been feeling but couldn't quite name, please take a moment right now to subscribe and leave a comment below. Tell us, which of these movements are you going to start with tomorrow morning? Your answer might be exactly what someone else reading this needs to hear. This community grows when people like you show up and share. Let's step back and look at what you now have. You have a movement for your ankle to reduce the shock that travels up into your knee with every step. You have a movement for your VMO to stop the drift that causes friction and irritation. You have a movement for your joint itself to circulate the fluid that feeds your cartilage and warms your mornings. You have a movement for your eccentric control to build the braking strength that prevents falls during descent. And you have a movement for your lateral stability to protect your pelvis, your knee, and your independence every time you take a single step. 10 to 12 minutes, 2 to 4 times a week. That is all. And within 3 weeks, not 3 months, not a year, most people begin to notice something has changed. Standing feels smoother. Stairs feel less like a decision. Morning stiffness clears faster, not because aging has stopped, but because the specific, targeted neglect of specific critical muscles has stopped. There is a truth about independence that nobody says out loud, and I think it deserves to be said. Independence is not usually lost in a single dramatic moment. It fades quietly, slowly, in the space of small daily hesitations that accumulate one by one into a life that feels smaller than it used to. The armrest you started using, the walk you started skipping, the stairs you started avoiding, the activities you slowly stopped planning because somewhere quietly you stopped trusting your body to be there for you. But here is the other side of that truth, the side that doesn't get said nearly enough. If independence can fade quietly, it can also return quietly through small actions, consistent ones, targeted ones, not dramatic, not overwhelming, not requiring you to become an athlete or transform your entire life. Just 10 minutes, a few days a week, doing movements that speak directly to the systems that have gone silent. Your knees are not fragile, they are adaptable. Your muscles are not gone, they are waiting. And your mornings, the ones that currently feel like negotiations, like strategies, like something to be endured, those mornings can feel different. Not someday, sooner than you think. All it takes is the decision to stop accepting the silence as permanent and to start